It was still dark outside when the pounding started, not a knock, but a frantic, relentless assault on the thick oak of my front door. My eyes snapped open, and I looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 5:02 a.m. That hour belongs to the dead and the desperate. No one from my quiet, predictable world knocks at 5:02 a.m. unless something has gone fundamentally wrong. I threw on a gray sweatshirt, the collar still twisted from the dryer, and moved silently through the house, my heart hammering a chaotic rhythm against my ribs. When I opened the door just a crack, the neighbor from across the street, Damien Voss, stood there. His face, usually a study in controlled neutrality, was pale and slick with what looked like a cold sweat. It appeared as though he had sprinted the 10 meters between our houses with his shallow and irregular breathing. "Don't go to the city today, Sarah," he whispered, his voice raw, vibrating with a tightly coiled urgency. "Stay home. Don't step outside the perimeter. Just trust me." I looked at him completely perplexed. Damien Voss was the quietest, most private person on the block. He was polite, yes, but rarely spoke more than a clipped greeting in passing. I knew nothing about him, other than he was often gone, and his house was immaculate. Seeing him like this, terrified, desperate, his composure completely shattered, felt like watching a fundamental law of physics break. "What are you talking about?" I asked, pushing the door open a bit further, the cold morning air hitting my bare legs. "Did something happen on the news? A gas leak?" His eyes, a startling deep gray, were sharp, intense, and fixed on mine with a warning that felt like a physical grip as he shook his head. "I cannot explain it this time. The fewer details you know, the safer you are. Just promise me, on your life, you will not leave the house today. Not for any reason." Everything felt unreal. The cold air, the first faint pink-orange streaks of light beginning to bruise the horizon, and Damien, usually so devoid of emotion, looking like a man who was seconds away from a collapse. "Damien, you're scaring me," I managed, taking a slow, shaky breath. "Why should I not go? We have the quarterly review at Sterling and Reed. I can't just skip it." He hesitated, his gaze darting quickly down the street, then back to me. Then his voice dropped into a near-silent hiss. "You'll understand by noon." Before I could ask anything else, he took one large step back, scanned the neighborhood one final time, as if expecting a drone to drop from the sky, and walked swiftly back to his house. He never looked back. The entire frantic encounter lasted less than a minute. I stood there in the silence, my hand still gripping the icy doorknob, my mind reeling. The rational part of me, the part that managed multi-million-dollar portfolios and dealt in predictable risk, wanted to dismiss it as delusion. Maybe he was having a nervous breakdown. But another part of me, a deep, silent instinct I had learned to trust, screamed a warning. Don't ignore this. And there was one more, heavy reason I couldn't just shrug it off. 3 months ago, I lost my father, Dr. Julian Hayes. His death was sudden. Officially, it was listed as a massive, inoperable stroke, but in the weeks before it happened, he had been increasingly agitated, almost desperate, trying constantly to talk to me about something vital he needed to show me. "It's about your mother's side, Sarah," he'd insisted, his voice low and tight. "It's about our family's real inheritance. It's time you knew the truth behind your condition." Then, before we ever had that conversation, he was gone. Since then, the subtle, chilling oddities had begun. A dark, unmarked sedan, never the same model, always black, always tinted, parked near my driveway for hours. My phone ringing from blocked numbers, answering to nothing but the sound of distant white noise. My younger sister, Naomi, a research analyst working in Geneva, calling to ask, out of the blue, if I had felt like I was being watched. No one had stated a threat, but I had felt the pressure, a quiet, systematic closing of the perimeter around my life. Something was moving, intentionally, and whatever it was, it had started the day my father died. My name is Serafina Hayes. I am 33 years old, a financial advisor, and a creature of structure and habit. I live alone in the small home I bought near the firm. It was a perfectly quiet, predictable life. Until today. I made a choice in that moment, not driven by fear, but by the cold, precise logic of risk mitigation. If Damien was wrong, I would simply take a personal vacation day, minor loss. If he was right, a life was at stake. I emailed my managing partner, citing an acute migraine, and then I waited. The minutes flew by. The silence of the house became a heavy, suffocating weight. Every ordinary sound, the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock, the slow hum of the refrigerator's compressor, the faint creak of the wood floors, sounded like someone attempting to speak a warning through the walls. By 11:30 a.m., I started to feel overwhelmingly foolish. Nothing had happened. Damien hadn't returned. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the stress of my father's death was finally breaking me. I walked into the kitchen, reaching for the espresso machine, ready to call my partner and admit I'd made an overreaction. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number, displayed only as restricted. I answered, expecting a telemarketer or a recorded message. Instead, a calm, deeply authoritative voice said, "Ma'am, this is Detective Riley with Federal Homeland Security. We are attempting to contact Serafina Hayes. Are you aware of a critical, ongoing incident at your place of employment this morning?" My breath hitched. "What incident?" The voice became graver. "There was a violent, highly targeted attack at the Sterling and Reed building. Several employees are confirmed casualties. We have reason to believe you were present at the onset." Bruno, my entire body went numb with a cold shock that penetrated my bones. "That's impossible. I wasn't there. I'm home." Silence, long, accusatory, and thick with implication. The detective then responded in a methodical and precise tone. "We have time-stamped security footage of your personal vehicle, a black 2021 Audi A4, arriving at the parking garage at 8:02 a.m. Your biometric keycard was used to enter the secure perimeter, and security reports indicate you were observed on the 14th floor just minutes before the operational alert was triggered." My knees suddenly felt hollow. I gripped the granite counter edge, staring blankly at my own reflection. Someone had used my identity. Someone wanted the world to believe I was there. "I'm telling you, I was home," I repeated, trying to steady the frantic tremor in my voice. "Someone must have cloned my credentials or stolen my car." "That's highly improbable, Miss Hayes." The detective paused, and I heard the faint rustle of paper. "Items belonging exclusively to you, a distinct silver locket and a monogrammed laptop bag, were recovered near the location of the incident." Items belonging to me. The memory of Damien's pale face and whispered warning slammed into my consciousness. "You'll understand by noon." Someone had not just planned a crime, they had meticulously planned the aftermath, with me as the centerpiece. "My car," I croaked. "Did your footage capture the person who exited the vehicle?" The detective's response was extremely direct and chilling. "The relevant footage is corrupted. We see the vehicle and your license plates clearly. We do not see the driver's face." My pulse quickened, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. Or an identical copy. My identity had not just been stolen, it had been replaced, set up to take the fall. Frontline, I could ask any more questions, the officer concluded, his voice shifting into a chilling declaration of intent. "Ms. Hayes, due to the nature of the incident and the evidence recovered, federal units are being dispatched to your address. Please do not leave the premises. You are required to remain available for immediate questioning." My entire survival instinct went into overdrive. If Damien was right, and if someone had impersonated me in a staged, violent attack, then the federal agents showing up were not coming for a chat. They were coming to take me into a black hole of custody, to complete the perfectly constructed narrative. Finano, I moved on pure, cold adrenaline, closing the rest of the blinds, checking the locks on every window and door. I reviewed the last 3 months, the subtle shifts, the shadows I had tried to rationalize away. The emails from unknown accounts asking about my Tuesday schedule. The car that followed me 3 blocks off my usual route. It wasn't paranoia. It had been reconnaissance. Monitored. A second later, a sharp, controlled knock came at my back door. It was precise, deliberate, and utterly devoid of hesitation. The sound of someone anticipating entry, not a worried neighbor. I froze, heart accelerating, and backed away from the door. Another knock. Then Damien Voss's voice, low and urgent, came through the wood. "Sarah, it's me. Don't call the number back. Open the door. They're already on your block." I moved slowly toward the door, but didn't unlock it. "How did you know they would call me, Damien? How did you know what happened at the firm?" I demanded through the solid wood. Confiscated was a clipped instruction. Because the attack was timed for noon, they needed to ensure you were home, alive, and available to be framed. "They're not coming to process a witness, Sarah. You will be held in federal detention as the sole perpetrator when they arrive. Your name is the only thing they left uncorrupted in the footage." My mind spun. "What are you talking about? Why stage a crime to blame me?" "They needed a spectacle to justify the subsequent seizures and cover-ups," he hissed. "You were meant to be eliminated in the building, but when you missed the window, the plan shifted. Now, they need you alive long enough to confess to the manifesto they've already written." A terrifying wave of comprehension washed over me. The scale of the conspiracy was massive. Whoever was behind this didn't just want me gone. They wanted my very existence weaponized and discredited. I opened the door slowly, not because I suddenly trusted Damien, but because I knew the alternative. The looming black vehicles and the detective's calm voice was infinitely more dangerous. His sharp, watchful eyes locked onto mine the instant the door cracked open, scanning the empty street behind me. Without preamble, he slipped inside and closed the door, sealing us in the sudden darkness of the shaded house. "They're deploying," he confirmed, his voice now a professional, tactical monotone. "You have maybe 3 minutes before they breach. This house will be declared a crime scene." "Why?" Crossing my arms, I demanded, attempting to keep the violent tremor from reaching my hands. "What is so important about me? I'm just an advisor." This time, he didn't hesitate. "I didn't move here by accident, Sarah. I was assigned here. I moved here to watch over you. Your father asked me to." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. My father? No, my father was a quiet man, a professor of accounting, a tax specialist. He never... Damien turned to face me, his gray eyes piercing the gloom. "That was his cover, meticulously maintained for 20 years. Your father never taught accounting. He was an undercover agent looking into a program called The Initiative for a federally sanctioned oversight division. And you, Sarah, were the subject of that investigation." My lips became dry. "What does that mean? The subject?" Heavy winter jacket and pulled out a small, worn, black leather envelope. "Your father knew this day was coming. He left this for you." My fingers shook violently as I took it. Inside was a single, folded sheet of paper in my father's familiar, precise handwriting. "Kangafina, if you are reading this, then the silence has broken. The threat is inherited, not external. You are not in peril because of anything you did, but because of who you are and what you inherently possess. There is a truth behind your childhood medical history that they have spent decades trying to suppress. Damien will explain the rest. Trust him, just as you once trusted me. Do not surrender to the authorities. The truth will die with me if they take you, and your name will be erased. Dad." Tears instantly blurred my vision. He had known. He had been protecting me, not being delusional. The memory of his anxious final weeks, his aborted warnings, now felt like ghost hands pushing me toward the truth. Damien spoke gravely. "They're not just framing you, Sarah. They're reclaiming their property." "Reclaiming," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. You were never a simple civilian. Your birth was recorded, categorized, and tracked. Your father stumbled upon the initiative, a shadowy biogenetics program tied to high-ranking global figures, including Senator Aldrich Vane. He learned that you, Subject 7B, were the program's most valuable asset. When he tried to pull you out of their orbit and expose them, he was deemed a liability. His death was a warning, meticulously staged to look like a natural event. To use me as what? He took a step closer, his eyes intense. As a narrative, a crisis. By framing you as a domestic threat, they establish justification for national security protocols. That allows them to seize every file your father hid, destroy the records of the initiative, and complete Phase 2 of your integration, which means full capture and research. You were meant to be the final, silent witness to a truth they want buried forever. He reached into his coat one last time and pulled out a dense, metallic keycard, etched with an unfamiliar, interlocking, serpentine red emblem. This is access to a secure, deep storage vault your father prepared years ago. It contains the encrypted master files, which include the names, financial information, and the entire operation's scope. Everything your father died for, and everything you are, will be buried if you don't get to that vault before they do. After looking intently at my father's note and the key card, my entire life, my career, my friendships, my routine, had been a perfectly engineered cage. I had believed I was ordinary, easily replaceable. The terror of being hunted was now replaced by the cold fury of betrayal. I was never invisible. I was watched because I was the last piece of a genetic puzzle someone powerful intended to finish. Suddenly, the unmistakable, muffled wail of distant sirens began to echo, not loud, but rapidly approaching our neighborhood. "They're here," Damien said, moving instantly to the door. His eyes, however, showed no fear, and in that moment neither did mine, because the initial fear had been replaced by the stark, crystalline clarity of rage. I folded the letter, placed the cold keycard in my pocket, and met Damien's gaze. "Show me where we need to go." He nodded once, a grim acceptance, and in that breath, I crossed the line between the comfortable, fabricated life I had known and the terrifying, real life I was born to face. We barely made it to Damien's black, ruggedized SUV before the first unmarked black vehicles, heavy, silent Suburbans, turned the corner onto my street. The sirens had cut off abruptly. They didn't need the noise anymore. They weren't coming as law enforcement. They were coming as retrieval agents. "Come down," Damien ordered, his foot slamming the accelerator to the floor the second my door clicked shut. We shot out of the driveway. Through the rear window, I saw two heavily built men, wearing civilian clothes but moving with military precision, step out of the first car. One of them lifted a radio to his mouth, his expression cold and certain, like a man reclaiming stolen property, not pursuing a person. As we sped away from the quiet suburban street and onto the main highway, a strange, absolute stillness settled over me. A surge of pure, focused energy replaced the fear that had been present. Something deep inside me had clicked, like a safety lock disengaging. After 20 minutes of intense, evasive driving, Damien spoke, his eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the road ahead. "Before we enter the vault, you need to fully comprehend something, the gravity of what you are." He reached into a hidden compartment on the dashboard and handed me a sealed titanium tablet. A single file was open, labeled Hayes, S, Subject 7B. Designation, Genomic Asset, High Priority, Project Origin Initiative. I scrolled down through dense, detached medical jargon, gene expression chart, elevated markers for cellular regeneration, and unique immunological response. Note: subject exhibits complete tested immunity to multiple viral and chemical strains, including the Redfall bioweapon. Subject approved for Phase 2 integration. "Redfall?" I whispered, the word cold and sharp. Immune to what? Damien's jaw was tight. 20 years ago, the initiative wasn't trying to create a cure. They were attempting to establish a class for survivors, people who could withstand the collapse they planned to engineer. They found a naturally occurring genetic marker in your mother's rare bloodline, a mutation that grants near-perfect immunity and enhanced healing. They called it the Rowan factor. The highway lights flashed past us like a strobe. My mother sighed. My father said, "Your father stumbled on it when he noticed highly unusual antibodies in your standard childhood vaccinations," Damien cut in. He realized that the program you were unaware of was tracking and studying you without your knowledge. He tried to pull you out, but by then you were too valuable. They see you as a walking, breathing patent. Me, a subject, a patent, a target. The truth was grotesque. Your father went deep, Alara. He leaked evidence of their bioweapon development, including the Redfall strain, to a small oversight group, Damien continued. The people at the top, Vane and his contemporaries, didn't end the program. They executed the oversight group and everyone involved, including your father with a specialized neurotoxin. It looked like a stroke, but it was a message. This secret dies with us. They planned to retrieve you on your 33rd birthday, the time they estimated your markers would stabilize fully, Damien explained, his voice grim. But something changed. Your medical profile was accessed, and your asset status was suddenly elevated. That's why they staged the attack today. They feared you were compromised, and they decided to use the attack to neutralize their external threats, while simultaneously capturing you without a trace. And now? Now, the Revelation Protocol will confirm your location, Damien said abruptly, before abruptly turning onto an unpaved path through dense forest. We're going deep underground. They will publicly declare you a domestic terrorist and initiate asset recovery protocol. They don't just want your body, they want to control the narrative. If the world thinks you're dangerous, no one questions your disappearance. The trees grew dense, the air immediately colder. My heart hammered, but it was no longer the sound of panic, but of a terrifying purpose. I was no longer fleeing my familiar life. I was running into the life I was born for. Prohibited helps a section of the hill where the foliage seemed suspiciously uniform. Beneath the overgrown dirt, the faint outline of a massive concrete barrier was visible. The keypad was in a recess when Damien stopped the SUV and moved a stone, revealing it. "Final warning, Sarah," he said, turning to me, his voice quiet. "Once you use the key, there is no return. Everything your father died for will be known to you. And once you know it, they will never, ever stop hunting you." "I've been hunted my whole life without knowing why," I said, meeting his eyes. "I need to know what they're so desperate to control." He nodded, a gesture of respect, and a heavy groaning hiss announced the slow, grinding movement of the concrete door sliding into the earth. The bunker door sealed shut behind us with a deep, echoing metallic thud that reverberated through the long, steel-lined corridor. The air was cold, dry, and untouched, as though this place had been waiting, preserved in time, specifically for me. Damien moved with practiced, immediate certainty toward the back of the chamber. I followed, each step heavier than the last, and with every footfall, a strange, deep sensation started building in my chest, not fear, but a visceral, cellular recognition. My body knew this place, even if my mind did not. We stopped before a massive vault door, circular and engraved with an elaborate, interlocking crest, a lion rampant, holding a helix. I recognized it. My father had once shown me a sketch of it, claiming it was an ancient family crest. Now, I saw the truth. It was a designation mark for a secured genetic bloodline. Damien pointed to a small, wall-mounted optical scanner. "Your DNA is the final key. Your father told me this vault will only recognize the Rowan factor bloodline. You are the last fully tracked individual." I hesitated for only a second. I pressed my palm flat against the scanner. A pulse of emerald light ran along my skin, analyzing the unique markers. After a soft chime, the vault majestically opened with the sound of gears grinding and air rushing. Cold storage air spilled out, carrying a scent that made my chest tighten. Old paper, ozone, and something else, a faint metallic smell that felt inherently familiar. The room inside was circular, lined floor to ceiling with heavy, reinforced metal cabinets and shelves of black-coated boxes. At the center of the room was a simple glass pedestal, and on it, sealed inside a protective case, was a single, worn, leather-bound volume, Dr. Julian Hayes's private journal. With trembling hands, I lifted the case and opened the bookmarked page. A final letter was written specifically to me. If you are reading this, my Seraphina, then the silence has ended and the lies have been exposed. But what I need you to know above all else is this. You were never an accident. You were never a failure of their design. You were the first successful proof of natural human evolution. They did not create you. They only found you. You were born with what they have spent decades, billions of dollars, and countless lives trying to manufacture. The power is not what was done to you. It is what you already are, a natural antidote to the very plagues they plan to release. You are the future they fear, because you represent a biological loophole they cannot control. I close my eyes, tears hot against the sudden cold. My father didn't just die to protect my life. He died to protect my potential. Not a weapon, but the proof of unmanufactured hope. On the next page was his final, devastating instruction. There is one final choice, Seraphina. Only you can make it. At the far end of this vault lies the master control terminal. One command will trigger the acquisition protocol, giving them your compliance and silencing the vault forever. The other will trigger the revelation protocol, simultaneously releasing every classified document tied to the initiative to global media and non-governmental entities. Once the choice is made, the timer is absolute. I looked at Damien. He stood by the vault entrance, his expression unreadable. He simply said, "Your father trusted you to decide, not as a subject, but as a human being." As I made my way toward the airport terminal, I walked with perfectly steady but heavy legs. Under a thick layer of glass, two buttons, comply, a soft, inviting green, and reveal, a harsh, resolute red, shone. If I chose comply, I might survive, vanishing into their labs, sacrificing my freedom for silence. If I chose reveal, I would unleash chaos, name the most powerful people on Earth, and make myself their most hunted enemy. It was the moment of revenge, not personal retribution, but a systemic counterattack. The second button was pressed, reveal. A low, subterranean hum filled the chamber. A countdown timer flashed onto the screen, 00959. Data began flooding instantly onto secure preset channels. Names, financial records, genetic markers, bioweapon logs, all streaming to encrypted global servers. There was no going back. "It's done," Damien exhaled, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. "You just started the war." Suddenly, high-pitched alarms blared from the walls, drowning out the hum of the servers. "Unauthorized data release detected. Location pinpointed. Initiative units inbound." "They found us!" I shouted. "No, you told them where we were," Damien corrected, already pulling a silenced handgun from a shoulder holster. The revelation protocol was a digital flare. They needed to find the source immediately to mitigate the damage. "Our time is up." Naked through the corridor toward a marked emergency exit tunnel. As we ran, I grabbed a heavy, coated black box from one of the shelves. The only item I took, trusting my father's placement. "They'll have air and ground units here in less than 2 minutes," Damien yelled, pushing me ahead. "We need to get to the extraction point before they seal the exit." We burst out of the tunnel and into the cold, dense forest. The rain had intensified to a heavy drizzle, and the rhythmic, terrifying thump, thump, thump of heavy helicopters was rapidly closing in overhead. Suddenly, 3 figures in dark, armored tactical gear materialized through the thick foliage, their specialized assault rifles locking onto us. They were the initiative's private security force, not the police. "Stop! Subject 7B, drop the weapon and surrender!" one shouted, aiming directly at Damien. Damien shoved me violently behind a large, moss-covered boulder as heavy rounds ripped through the air. The sound was deafening, the smell of gunpowder immediate. Estimation point. Damien returned fire with controlled bursts, covering our immediate position. "Sarah, I can't clear a path. You have to move. The exit is 50 yards that way." "No, we go together," I shouted back, clutching the black box. "I need you to tell the world what's happening." Over our heads, a powerful grenade flew in an arc and exploded behind the boulder. I felt a sharp, burning sting in my leg and my arm from shrapnel, but the pain, though acute, faded almost immediately. Strange, dull ache followed by a rapid diminishment. I glanced down. My jeans and sweatshirt were torn, but the skin beneath was already showing a faint, silvery line where the wounds were closing. The terrifying, impossible truth hit me with a clarity that cut through the panic. The Rowan factor was real. "The box, Sarah!" Damien yelled, struggling to keep the operatives pinned down. "It's a data relay. It has the final access codes." I fumbled with the clasp. Complex coordinates and a concluding message were displayed on the small screen inside, ending with a single name in capital letters: Senator Aldrich Vane. "Damien! It's Senator Vane! He's the highest point of contact!" Before he could respond, a fourth operative, moving with brutal stealth, flanked us and slammed the butt of his rifle directly into Damien's temple. Damien crumpled, his pistol skittering away. "Asset secured! Retrieve Subject 7B alive!" the operative commanded into his headset, charging toward me. I looked at the charging operative. I took a look at my arm, where the wound had reduced to a crude bruise. I felt a surge of cold, focused fury, entirely alien to my nature as a financial advisor. A terrifying, clinical instinct flooded my mind. Disruption point. Low center mass. Momentum offset. Lead with the hip. When the operative lunged, I didn't run. I moved with a sudden, shocking speed, dropping low and executing a powerful, natural leg sweep. He went down hard, the wind knocked out of him. Before he could recover, I grabbed his rifle, reversed it, and slammed the stock against the side of his helmet with a power that left my own muscles burning. He slumped, unconscious. I looked at my hands, shaking violently, not from weakness, but from the realization of what I had just become. "The subject is definitely integrated," Damien gasped, pushing himself up, clutching his bleeding temple. "We need to move, Alara. They'll be using thermal imaging." Monitored him to his feet. "Senator Vane, he's the endgame," I said, my voice now steady and hard. "He's the face of the corruption," Damien agreed, leaning on me slightly. "The Revelation Protocol was the first shot. Now, we go for the kill shot." We plunged deeper into the dark, wet forest, the cold air revitalizing me in a way it shouldn't have. My life as Serafina Hayes, financial advisor, was over. The revenge was no longer about proving my innocence. It was about destroying the entity that engineered my birth, murdered my father, and planned to use me to redefine human fate. The hunt had begun, and I was no longer the prey. I was the reckoning.